Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking on something really essential.
Something that could be a little uncomfortable even.
Yeah, exactly. We're going on a journey into what it actually takes to be wise. We're not talking about just, accumulating knowledge.
Right.
We're diving into the work, the courage, the self-awareness, and that relentless intellectual flexibility it takes to move beyond just being smart.
That's the mission. We're unpacking sources that look at this fascinating resistance people have. Why we fight changing our minds, how these deep emotional wounds from our past can dictate our decisions right now.
And why seeking out criticism is so important for growth.
Absolutely. And just how much deep, hard work it takes to really understand, to truly master even one subject.
And the thing that really sets the tone here is this paradox. If wisdom means growth, then, real folly is just refusing to change.
Seeing the same.
And yet, our sources show that so often the most brilliant people are somehow the easiest to fool, or the most resistant to admitting they're wrong.
We just assume smart equals wise.
But it doesn't. The real work of wisdom is finding the courage to reject that comfort zone, because as history shows, a fool is someone who stays the same.
So if that journey toward wisdom is all about intellectual flexibility, then, refusing to change a belief, even when the evidence is staring you in the face.
That's the biggest failure of judgment there is.
It is.
So let's start with this really powerful example from American history. It's about intellectual courage, and it involves two literary giants, Richard Wright and Ralph Ellison.
Right. And both of them were, leading Black writers who got drawn into the Communist Party back in the 1930s.
And you have to understand the context. The 1930s.
Oh, absolutely. American capitalism was just in ruins. There were soup kitchens everywhere. But for them, it was more than that.
In Jim Crow America.
In Jim Crow America, the Communist Party was making this unique promise. It might have been the only political movement at the time that didn't just preach racial equality, but seemed to actually practice it.
It must have felt like a total lifeline. They were getting respect, opportunity, a platform like the Daily Worker, things they couldn't get anywhere else.
And for a while, everything probably felt so clear. Every huge question about injustice seemed to have a simple, direct answer right there in the party doctrine.
But that clarity, it came with a price.
It did. Over time, both of them started to feel really uncomfortable with movements, fanatical intolerance, as they put it, and this nasty streak of anti-intellectualism.
There's that chilling story Wright told about a party leader just casually mentioning how many intellectuals had just been executed in Russia.
Wow.
And that just highlights the whole conflict, doesn't it? These are novelists. Their whole world is about understanding that human life is messy, it's complex.
It contains multitudes.
Exactly. It can't be squeezed into one simple theory or a rigid ideology. They realized they hadn't been drawn in by some rational argument.
No, it was emotional. It was the appeal of hope, of community, of a dream.
Right.
So when Ellison finally broke away from the party, he put it so simply. He said, "The break with the Communist Party has allowed me to come alive." He felt like he'd been intellectually suffocated.
And what's so crucial for us here, I think, is the psychology of it. It is so hard to reason yourself out of a position you didn't reason yourself into.
That's a great way to put it.
Their commitment was rooted in emotion, in desperation. So breaking away meant admitting they'd been wrong, that they'd been blind. And that takes, immense courage.
Well, that's really the core question for anyone listening, right? What do you do when the facts change? The truly wise person has a way to deal with that discomfort.
Like John Maynard Keynes, who supposedly said, "When the facts change, I change my mind. What do you do, sir?"
Exactly. Or Admiral Hyman Rickover. He took it even further. He said that to doubt one's own first principles is the mark of a civilized man.
So being wrong at first isn't the failure. The failure is just staying rigidly wrong when you know better. But what is it that makes that so hard? Why do we cling to those principles even when the facts are screaming at us?
Well, our sources suggest the answer is often buried deep in our own personal history. We have to face the fact that, a lot of brilliant people are, psychologically speaking, still children.
Children making huge global decisions.
Right. Which brings us to this key concept, the adapted child. It's this idea that wounded kids create these coping mechanisms to protect themselves in a tough environment.
And if you never examine those mechanisms,
they stop you from becoming a fully functional, self-aware adult.
We see this playing out all the time with powerful people today. The sources detail this horrendous childhood Elon Musk had in South Africa.
Violently bullied, even hospitalized, and his father actually blamed him for it. Musk has called his own father a terrible human being who committed almost every crime you can possibly think of.
And that's the key insight, right? All the success, all the fame and wealth in the world, it doesn't just erase that trauma.
No. His first ex-wife said something like, inside the man, he's still there as a child standing in front of his dad. And you see that need for approval or that fear of being weak driving their behavior, even at the height of their power.
And historically, this pattern just defines some of the biggest flaws in leaders. You think of Alexander the Great just pushing to the ends of the earth.
Seemingly driven by this need to outdo his father.
Or Richard Nixon, the most powerful man in the world, just terrified of being seen as weak. The real work of wisdom is getting out of that self-incurred immaturity.
And if you fail to do that, you end up with this profound intellectual fragility. This is the fragile fool. The sources actually connect this idea to a really counterintuitive example. 19th century American slave owners.
Which sounds jarring at first.
It does, but the analysis is powerful. We know that privately, a lot of them knew slavery was morally wrong. You can see it in Thomas Jefferson's writings, this deep internal guilt.
But their entire world, their wealth, their social status, it was all built on this lie. So they needed a massive effort to rationalize it.
A huge effort. They banned books, they policed speech, they created mountains of pseudoscience. And why? Because their emotional foundation was just so brittle.
Tocqueville called them domestic dictators.
Right, and that made them incredibly sensitive. The sources argue they were, intellectually, these highly sensitive snowflakes. For them, the mere idea of equality felt like oppression. Any contradiction was an existential threat.
And that's what persists today, that inability to handle contradiction. When new information or criticism threatens that deep-seated self-perception,
They just double down.
it's what Emerson warned about, right? Seeking repose or comfort over seeking truth.
Exactly. So when you see powerful figures respond to criticism by, I don't know, challenging someone to a cage match or banning words they don't like because they feel targeted.
You're seeing that deep-seated fragility in action, that refusal to face an uncomfortable reality. So if the whole goal is self-knowledge to escape that fragility, then you have to actively seek out discomfort. You have to seek criticism. It's not optional.
And this isn't a new idea. Even people with unchecked power understood this. Take Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor of Rome.
Right.
He knew that honest feedback was this incredibly rare, precious thing. His mentor, Fronto, sent him this detailed critique of an essay he wrote.
And Marcus wrote back saying the critical letter gave him the greater pleasure. He actually appreciated the fault findings.
He saw them as guides.
And this is where you see the real strength of the wise. Think about Martin Luther King Jr. He was facing massive public disapproval. In 1966, almost half of Americans viewed him unfavorably.
He had enemies everywhere, but he was intellectually strong enough to handle dissent, not just from outside, but from inside his own movement.
Yeah, that's a key point. You had the Black Power movement, the younger activists in SNCC, all actively challenging his nonviolent philosophy.
And he could take it. He was strong enough to endure physical attacks, but also, crucially, intellectually strong enough to endure severe dissent.
He demanded it from his inner circle, too. He told his aide, Andrew Young, "You know that most of us are certifiably insane." He was saying, I need you to point out the problems. He didn't want his life's work thrown away because of some foolishness or a preventable mistake. He invited the challenge.
Which connects right to learning from those mistakes. The sin isn't making a mistake. The sin is making it again.
It's like what Lou Gehrig's manager said about him. He wasn't a natural, but his great virtue was he never makes the same mistake twice.
He makes all the mistakes all right, but not twice. He used every error as a feedback loop for growth.
Which means you have to hold yourself accountable privately, too. You can't be like the person Churchill described who stumbled over the truth, but always picked himself up and hurried on as if nothing had happened.
You can't just ignore it. Marcus Aurelius, in his private journal, Meditations, was constantly checking himself. He wrote, "It's the truth I'm after, and the truth never harmed anyone. What harms us is to persist in self-deceit and ignorance."
He knew the real damage comes from protecting your own ignorance. And that self-deceit, that ignorance, is exactly what happens when people only stay on the surface of a subject. Real wisdom demands you go deep.
And it requires this relentless vigilance against people who just want to sell you easy answers.
Fools want the summary. The wise want to know what's underneath, and they'll go to incredible lengths to find it. I mean, Leonardo da Vinci is the ultimate example.
He just refused to be content with the first look.
Think about it. He didn't just paint people. He performed 30 dissections to understand anatomy that dwarfed centuries of medical knowledge before him.
When he painted water, he didn't just look at a river. He studied the mechanics of oceans and tides.
He even told other artists to carry notebooks, to constantly sketch and observe the circumstances and behaviors of men. Just constant, deep observation.
And that level of immersion is so critical because the truth is often hidden. It's hidden by convenience or jargon or just deliberate confusion. And this wasn't just for art or science.
Right, look at the abolitionist Thomas Clarkson. He knew slavery was wrong, but just knowing that wasn't enough to fight it.
No, not effectively.
So to fight it, he treated the slave trade like a business, like a logistical enterprise that had to be taken apart piece by piece.
So he spends years just immersed in the data. He's interviewing people who'd been to Africa. He's digging through custom house records, trial transcripts, even insurance papers that showed how slavers priced human beings.
And the sources say he ended up knowing more about the slave trade than almost anyone who actually practiced it.
Because the whole system required deliberate ignorance from the people who profited. If you want to solve a really painful, complex problem, you have to go deeper than the people who benefit from keeping things on the surface.
But that hunger for simple answers for the surface level take is what makes even really smart people vulnerable to what Marcus Aurelius called smooth talkers.
We see it everywhere now with conspiracy theories.
Take the basketball star Kyrie Irving, who got convinced the earth was flat and has fallen for other things since. The issue isn't that he's not intelligent.
No, the sources suggest it's because he is so convinced that he's smart that it makes him a very easy mark. It's vanity.
It's the desire for a tempting story to be true, and you see it all through history. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the guy who created Sherlock Holmes, fell for a hoax about fairies.
Or the Nobel Prize winner Linus Pauling, who convinced himself and millions that vitamin C could cure cancer. Their intelligence made them more susceptible because they thought they were smart enough to see a hidden truth that everyone else missed.
And this is exactly what demagogues exploit. Whether it's Cleon in ancient Greece or Hitler or modern figures, they appeal to passion and prejudice.
They sell the idea that complicated problems are actually simple and that it's all caused by some clear, identifiable them.
Even Malcolm X, he was initially drawn to the Nation of Islam because of the real injustices he saw. He became a demagogue preaching hatred.
But it says so much about his own journey that he eventually woke up. He saw the hypocrisy of the leader, Elijah Muhammad. He realized he'd been fooled, and he turned away from that hatred in the last months of his life.
And then finally, you have to acknowledge that just being brilliant isn't enough, not if you don't understand people.
Right, social intelligence. Socrates was the gadfly of Athens, the wisest man alive. But he was so oblivious to how he came across to people that it literally got him killed.
When he was convicted, instead of asking for mercy, he arrogantly suggests the court should give him a pension, like an Olympic champion.
And the jury that convicted him by a slim margin was so offended that a much larger majority then voted for his death sentence. His own arrogance sealed his fate.
You contrast that with someone like Benjamin Franklin, just as brilliant electricity inventions, but he was beloved.
Because he used his intelligence for regular people. He started lending libraries, fire departments. He was effective because he managed his genius with social grace. If you can't understand people, your brilliance is just useless in the real world.
So if we look back at all of this, wisdom is clearly not some passive state you arrive at. It's a continuous, uncomfortable, active effort.
It's constant revision.
It means dealing with that emotional baggage of the adapted child. It means changing your beliefs when you see new facts, demanding criticism, learning from every single error, and digging deep.
And the whole thing, every part of it really hinges on humility.
It does.
Because ignorance is always a solvable problem, but only if you admit the problem is there in the first place. There's that line from the Tao Te Ching that says, "Not to know, but to believe that one knows is a disease. Only by seeing this disease as a disease can one be free of it."
If you think you know everything, you can't learn anything. You're just locked in place.
Folly.
Which leaves us with a final, provocative thought for you to take with you. The true measure of your own progress toward wisdom isn't what you know right now. It's your willingness to put away those childish ways, those initial emotional assumptions from the adapted child that drove your most important decisions.
So you have to ask yourself, what have you been proven fundamentally wrong about recently? And what specific, hard, deep, and courageous work are you doing right now to address that error?
Because that right there is the core of the work.